When a band or a solo artist substantially shifts their sound, it can often be off-putting. Like when a band goes from sounding like this to sounding like this. Or when you go from this to this.
I got too much time. Too much time.
Or alternatively, when you go from sounding like this,
The Black Widow. Our minds will be his toy.
to sounding like this. I assume you're wondering the same thing that I'm wondering. What did I just watch? How did Alice get so far down the rabbit hole? What is this? I've never heard of this before. Sit tight, and I'll explain everything. See, after Muscle of Love, the band broke up, and Alice went solo, releasing what is probably his best solo album, Welcome to My Nightmare, in 1975. He would follow up this album with a string of solo albums throughout the end of the 70s, including Alice Goes to Hell, Lace and Whiskey, and From the Inside, with each one becoming less and less successful. Punk and disco were getting huge, and so-called dinosaur rock acts were going out of fashion in a big way. If you were an established artist, you had to either move with the times or get left behind. And Alice knew exactly what he had to do. He picked up a new backing band, and Roy Thomas Baker, the guy who produced all of the early Queen and The Cars albums. And together they produced Flush the Fashion, an album so committed to saying, look, we're hip, we're current, that it even has Alice Cooper 80 on the top of the album cover. The album came out in April of 1980. And actually did moderately well, with the song Clones We're All becoming a minor hit, Alice's last for quite a little while. The stylistic change alienated long-term fans, however, and failed to gain Alice enough new ones to compensate for the loss of said long-term fans, which is why Flush the Fashion was also the last album of Alice's to crack the top 50 for a long time, with each subsequent album selling less and less to the point where Zipper Catches Skin and Dada failed to chart entirely in the US. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. A lot of my favorite albums failed to chart. However, these albums have also been almost completely disowned by Cooper himself and are frequently looked upon as the low point of his entire career. So, is this album really as bad as people make it out to be? Let's find out.
Track 1. Talk.
This is a cover of an old song from a 60s garage band called The Music Machine, and it's honestly pretty awesome, even if it sounds like hard rock The Cars with Alice Cooper singing over it. Track 2, Clones We're All. This song is awesome, even if it really does feel like it should have been on a Cars record instead of an Alice Cooper record. But if you can accept that, it's a great song about conformity and society making everybody be the same, I think. Either that or it's just about clones, what do I know? Track 3, Pain. Now this song is pretty cool too. Relative to those first two tracks, it probably has more for the fans of late 70s Coop, because it really almost sounds like one of those ballads from Welcome to My Nightmare, Alice Goes to Hell, Lace and Whiskey, or From the Inside, but just with a more 80s flair. Track 4, Leather Boots. Leather Boots is new wave rockabilly? I'm not sure that the two styles they're mashing together here necessarily work together, but I like the song nonetheless. The song is about Alice looking at the police and wanting to be a police officer himself so that he can hurt people and get away with it. Track 5, Aspirin Damage. This is a fun little poppy new wave song about painkiller abuse and its negative side effects. Somehow I think this song is more relevant today than it was in the early 80s. Now this is a cool little song about being an irradiated freak running around wreaking havoc. And it's got some cool lyrics, like these ones.
Track 7. Grim Facts.
Now this song I love. It's much closer to the classic Alice Cooper sound than the rest of this album, with some great lyrics about less savory elements of society that people like to brush under the rug, like prostitution, crime, gangs, and other elements that prim and proper suburban parents like to pretend don't exist.
Track 8. Model Citizen.
This I like quite a bit too. Again, sorta closer to the old classic Alice style, but with some 80s elements. It's got a goofy anthemic quality, and the overblown synthesizer parts in the background just complete the picture for me. And there's some funny and clever lyrics.
Watch me sleep, they'd like to kill me slow and bury me deep.
In the heart of Texas.
Track 9. Dance Yourself to Death.
This song is pretty good too, making fun of new wave, disco, and various other late 70s, early 80s trends, as well as the fact that baby boomers were getting old at this time. The song is about a son being embarrassed by his trend-following parents and wishing that they would dance themselves to death. And why does it sound like something the Rolling Stones would have written around 1971?
Track 10. Headlines.
I feel like this song could be a metaphor for Alice Cooper's entire career. It's a song about a guy who will go to any extent to get his name, well, as it indicates in the title, in the headlines. And it's got some neat music and another one of those sort of over-the-top, goofy anthemic choruses. It's a fine way to close out this album. This album is pretty awesome. I seriously don't get why people bash this era of Alice so much. Okay, that's a barefaced lie. I know exactly why this era is so bashed upon. It's because it doesn't sound like anything else Alice has ever done up to this point. It doesn't have the aggressive hard rock of the early Alice Cooper Band albums, and it doesn't have the glitzy shock rock of the early Alice Cooper solo albums. Instead, sounding more like something that would have been put out by the Cars, Gary Newman, or Devo. But that's why I like these albums so much, because to a lesser extent, they sound better than, honestly, the majority of what he's done since. And frankly, I'd take the 4 albums he put out from 1980 to 1983 over anything else he put out in the 80s any day.